Hey, what's up everyone? Ralph here. So in this video, I'm going to share with you 10 lessons that you can learn from failure. And I think this conversation is important because like the word failure tends to get a bad rap, right? And I don't know where it comes from. Maybe it was when we were kids and we were punished for making mistakes. Regardless of where it comes from, we need to start looking at failure as a necessary tool in order to become successful. Because let's be honest, failure is inevitable, right? We're all going to encounter it in our lives, and as we grow and develop, we need to learn how to deal with it. So let's first start off with the first lesson that we can learn from failure, and that is resilience, right? And let's be honest, like failure is a natural part of life, and the good thing about failure is that we have the ability to overcome challenges. And the thing about failure is that it teaches us how to bounce back from setbacks and develop that resiliency, because we all need that. We all need to learn how to develop that mental strength, that callous that helps us overcome challenges that we're going to face in our life, whether it's like relationships with other people or our job. We need to learn how to understand and develop failure, because as you can see, like if you can see someone that's someone that understands failure compared to someone that doesn't, that person that knows how to deal with failure knows how to handle their emotion. They know how to deal with problems that come their way, as opposed to the other person that hasn't dealt with failure or is dealing with failure for the first time. They handle their emotions differently, or they're asking someone else to figure out their problems for them. So I think it's important for us to learn how to deal with failure, because it's a necessary part of life, and we need to learn how to do that. Especially as adults, we need to learn how to figure out our own problems. And I think it helps us develop that callous and that mental strength to overcome situations that might seem tough when we first encounter them. So let's move on to the second lesson, which is self-awareness. And I like this. This is an important one, because like let's be honest, like when we fail at something, what is the first thing we tend to do, right? We tend to look inward and say, all right, what did I do wrong? Like what can I improve? Like how did I like mess this up? Whatever it is, we tend to look inward and start to question ourselves. And I think that's important because it forces us to self-reflect, right? It allows us to like gain deeper knowledge of like what our strengths are, what our weaknesses, like what can we improve on. And I think that's an important thing, because for a lot of people, they struggle with this, right? Even though that's our natural human emotion, some people tend to say, you know what, it can't be me. It gotta be someone else. Like when it's a relationship with another person, it's like it's gotta be that other person, or maybe it's our job, it's gotta be our boss. It's always someone else. And I think for a lot of people, failure can be a struggle. And I think failure teaches you to be like, you know what? How do I look inward and say, you know what went wrong? How can I improve? How can I adjust to this? And how can I get better? And I think that's a good thing, because we all should be able to self-reflect and say, you know what, look inward and diagnose and assess like what we need to do to improve in life. Because that's a good thing. We all need to focus on looking inward and saying, how can we improve? Because we sometimes when failure happens, we expect things around us to change, when in reality it's us that needs to focus on change. Because it's easier to change ourselves than it is to change anything external. So I think self-awareness is very important when it comes to failure, because it allows us to look inward and say, okay, how can we improve and make sure that this failure doesn't happen again? The third lesson is adaptability, right? So failing forces us to reevaluate our strategies and adapt to changing circumstances. Because let's be honest, as human beings, the one thing we're good at is being able to adapt, right? Now, some people may not like that. Like they may not like change, so they say, you know what, I want the environment to change, when in reality, what they need to learn is to learn how to adapt. Because being able to adapt like allows us to problem solve, right? We understand that there's a reason why we failed at this. There's a reason why we weren't successful at whatever we tried to do. So it forces us to say, okay, you know what, how can I adapt, and how can I grow as an individual? How can I adapt to the circumstances and say, you know what, instead of me forcing the environment to change, how can I change and learn how to adapt within this environment, and not only just adapt, but to thrive at it. So I think it allows us to be adaptable creatures. And failure says, you know what, even though you failed at this, you can figure this out by adapting to the environment and saying, all right, you know what do I need to do in order to find success? And so I think failure is a great teacher in teaching us how to be adaptable in certain situations. So the fourth lesson on failure is humility, right? The good thing about failure, like failure will humble you and remind you that you're not infallible, right? It will remind you that you're not all that and that you don't know everything. And that's a good thing, right? Because it can help you recognize that there's always more to learn, right? Especially when you're dealing with other people. Like sometimes we tend to think that we know it all, especially if it's an area that we have an expertise in. But it's important to understand that we don't know everything, and it's important. It's okay to seek guidance or help with someone that may know more than us, and it's important to stay humble and say, you know what, maybe I don't know. Some people like to say that they're afraid of saying I don't know, or they don't like to seem like they're incompetent when it comes to something. But it's okay to just say, you know what, I don't know. Can you help me with that? And I think making sure we have that mindset of being humble and making sure that we understand that it's okay to seek guidance, especially when we're dealing with people that we work with, it can be a beneficial thing. So making sure that we stay humbled and understand that we don't know everything and that it's okay to seek help could be a good thing. And failure can teach you that very quickly. So the fifth lesson is perseverance. And I think this is a good one, right? Because failure tests your determination and perseverance, right? Like it teaches you not to give up easily and to make sure you keep going when things get tough. And it teaches you not to quit, right? Because it's easy to quit when things get rough, but failure teaches you to say, you know what? All right, you know what? Maybe I didn't do well in this. You know, I can't give up. I have to figure out how to get better. And if you can think about like Michael Jordan, right? Everyone talks about Michael Jordan, how many shots he missed, but he looked at it as a challenge. He didn't give up. He just kept shooting until he got better. And then when it came time to make those shots, especially in championships, he figured out a way to do that. So I think for a lot of us, is like failure teaches us how to be resilient, how to be strong, and how to not quit and keep going. And that's a good thing, because we need to develop that throughout our life. There's going to be so many challenges that we go through. We need to learn that when there's an obstacle in the way and we fail, not to give up, how to get up and keep going. And people like that. People like to see people that show a little bit of perseverance, and especially when it comes to sports. I know I like to use sports references a lot, but you know, someone that's played a lot of sports throughout his life, it's something that you deal with and you see it firsthand. So being able to not give up and persevere through challenges is a very important characteristic that a lot of people, for a lot of us, that we could take on and it could benefit us through life. So failure teaches you that, and failure teaches you time and time again that, you know what, yeah, you're going to fail, but you know what, as long as you don't quit, you don't give up, you'll figure out eventually how to overcome that obstacle. So lesson number 6 is innovative thinking. And the good thing about failure, right, it necessitates us to think and problem solve, right? Like when we have a problem, like say we fail at something, what we think about, the first thing we do is like, okay, what do I need to do, right? It gets the juices flowing and say, you know what, all right, what do I need to do in order to figure this problem out? Or it generates fresh ideas and it finds innovative solutions to overcoming a problem. And this is a good thing, because like when we have an issue, like when there's a problem where we're trying to figure something out, a lot of people tend to say, you know what, I can't, right? Which when you say I can't, it just shuts off the brain. But if you ask yourself the question, instead of saying I can't, you ask yourself how can I, then it just starts your brain from opens up all the different possibilities on how to solve that problem that you're encountering. And failure teaches you that, because failure is going to say, you know what, boom, you try something, you failed at, you say, all right, you know what, okay, what I gotta do now? And you can see this with kids, right? Like they fail all the time. They try when they're trying to walk, right? Babies, they try to walk, they get up, they fall down, they walk, they get up, they fall down again. But they don't quit, right? They keep going. They say, all right, what do I need to do? Like as long as I keep trying this, and it's probably more so. It's probably through the last one I talked, which is perseverance. But you can see that with children, like they fall all the time, but they figure out how to get out. They figure out how to get up and get used to walking. And like I say, they say it's baby steps, right? And that's and innovative thinking allows you to process and say, you know what, come up with solutions to your problem. And I think failure does that time again, which is a good thing. We all want that. We want to be able to figure out things. We want to problem solve, and we want to come up with solutions to our problems. So I think that innovative thinking is a great lesson that failure teaches us. So lesson number 7 is empathy and compassion. And obviously this is important because obviously we need to. Failure is something that teaches us a lot of things, and we need to understand that we're not the only ones that you're not the only one that's going through failure. Like there's other people as well, and I think failure provides us with that firsthand experience of like what it feels like to fail. So I think in order to really understand failure, like you need to have empathy and compassion for others that are failing as well. When you see them failing, you need to understand, like, you know what, I know what you're going through. I have been there before. And then you provide that counsel, that guidance, and that understanding that, you know what, hey, this is just part of the process. And then because of that empathy and compassion that you have, you can help guide that other person to the necessary steps in order to overcome that failure. So I think it's important for people to be like, you know what, because I've gone through that, I've dealt with that sort of failure before, then you can have that compassion for others that are going through that as well. And you can help provide that guidance and assistance and help, give them, set them up where they can learn how to overcome that as well. So failure teaches that to you. And then people that haven't gone through certain failures, it's hard for them to empathize and have that level of compassion for others that have gone through it if they've never gone through it themselves. So and that's how you deal with people. Like, it's easy when you find something that people relate to, that people have gone through that same sort of struggle. They create that bond because they understand the struggle, and they feel they understand, like, what I'm going through, what I'm dealing with. So failure teaches you very quickly that you need to also have empathy and compassion for others that are also going through struggles as well. So the 8th lesson, and this is probably my favorite lesson, and that's appreciation for success. Right now, success is a relative term, right? We all have different levels of success in our lives, but if you've ever worked so hard for something, whether it's sports, whether it's building a business, whether it's preparing for a marathon or whatever it is, and you finally reach that level of success, you understand how hard you work to get there. And some people don't understand it because, it's like baking a cake, right? All people see is the finished cake. All they see is the cake. They don't really understand the process that it took to bake that cake, all the ingredients that were put in beforehand to make sure that cake came out the way you want to. And that's the same thing for success, right? If you work so hard to build a business and you've reached that level point where you're starting to make money with your business, or you're making 5, 10, 6 figures, you understand how hard you work to get there, right? Maybe people haven't seen it. People haven't. They don't see all the work that you put in. All they see is the end product, where your net worth is high, that you're driving a nice car, have a nice house, have a family, whatever it is. They just see the end product, but you have an appreciation for success. And when you see others doing that, you then understand, because you understand that level of success, that level of grind. You develop a sort of appreciation for how hard a person works, and you see that, like, people can. And we tend to like that when we watch athletes and we learn about their story, and that's the thing. Like, if you've seen a successful person and you haven't heard their story, you're gonna be like, all right, you have an admiration for that person because they're successful. But when you hear the backstory, like everything they've gone through, like people that came up from the mud, and this is why we like learning about people's story. The fact that they came up from the mud and they just weren't giving things. We have a level of appreciation for someone that worked hard and came up from nothing and made something of themselves, compared to a person that just was giving things. Like, we tend to respect that person that came up from the mud. And having that level of appreciation success is something you learn, especially as you're someone especially as me, that's learning how to develop a business, grow a business, how to build wealth. It takes a lot of hard work. So when I see someone that's successful and I hear their backstory, I do have a strong appreciation for success. And failure will teach you that. Like, when you're going through that process, all those failure, as you're baking that cake, all those failures that you go through, you'll learn very quickly that this thing is not easy. It's something that's a process, and it takes a lot of work. So failure will definitely teach you that. So lesson number 9 is risk management, right? And the great thing about failure is that it'll allow you to evaluate risk more effectively, right? It'll help you understand that the potential consequences of your decisions, and it'll encourage you to make better decisions in the future. And this is a good thing, because obviously, like, we all have to make choices in life, right? And the goal is to make sure that if it's the wrong choice, that whatever the consequences is not too detriment, it doesn't hurt too much, right? It doesn't affect you too much. So I think when you're going through failure, and each failure that you go through, it allows you to assess risk more effectively. It says, all right, if I make this decision, what is the worst outcome? And you can decide to make that choice if you want. So it allows us to say, all right, just take a better approach in decision making, and allows us to assess our decision making more effectively. So, and that's a good thing, because you don't want to just be reckless, right? You want to make sure you're thinking it through, and making sure that you're making the best decision possible. And each failure that you go through, you say, all right, this happened last time when I failed. All right, I want to make sure going forward I avoid that same mistake. So the final lesson is a growth mindset, right? And the good thing about failure is that each failure that you go through is a way to grow and develop as a better person, right? It encourages us to embrace challenges and deal with adversity in a way that helps us develop as a human being. And the good thing is that we want to be able to embrace that, because it's all part of the process, right? We're all growing, we're all developing, and we want to get to a point where we can take on these challenges and take on these failures and share this with other people so that they can avoid it as well. But at the same time, we don't want to avoid challenges, because we understand that it's part of the process and it helps us grow as people. So definitely it's something that we should be continuously learning, how to overcome challenges and how to deal with failure as we go forward. So my final thoughts is, remember that failure is not a final outcome, right? But a stepping stone to a path of success, right? We need to learn how to embrace failure as a learning opportunity, and that can lead to personal growth. So just make sure to embrace failure and not look at it as something that's a negative. So that's all I got for you guys today. So if you got any comments, make sure to leave it down below, hit the like button, share, and if you haven't done so already, make sure to subscribe. All right, so you guys take care and have a good one. Later.